All right. Welcome to this 29th episode, or if I may, this 30th episode. Either 29th or 30th. You figured that one out by looking at the previous episode. But either way, welcome. Welcome to this episode. My guest today is a special guest. His name is Naveen. Naveen is a graduate of Warrior Week 36. Welcome, Naveen, to the show.
36. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Yeah,
Coach Sam.
36, bro. I said it right.
You did say it right.
I did not say it right 5 minutes ago, but I did say it right 36.
Give WW36 the respect we deserve.
Yes. So who are the guys that came into 36? Derek,
George, Matt,
Rusty.
Shane, Rusty.
Yeah.
A couple other guys.
Good.
It was a great group.
Great. All right. So welcome to the show.
Derek's my man. Shout out to Derek.
Derek was here a couple of episodes ago. So welcome to the show. You guys sit back, relax, and enjoy what's coming. That's who you are! Okay, all right. Let's go back and let's start by a simple question. Like, who the fuck is Naveen?
Well, first of all, Sam, thanks for having me. Appreciate the open-ended question with the expletive embedded in there. So I guess there's two ways to answer that question, right? I think there's the way I or a lot of us would have answered that question before Warrior Week, and then there's the way that we gave ourselves permission to answer it after Warrior Week. And that's, I think, an ongoing conversation with ourselves, right? That's an evolving, if we want to get really meta, that's an evolving place. But just to give some level set for the general stuff, from Chicago, parents are Indian, so from South India, Chennai area, if you know where that is.
Yes, I've been there for a month.
So you probably
Shout out to Chennai people.
You probably spend more time there than I have in the last 10 years or so since I've been, working. But, the last 10 years without having a extended high school vacation.
Nice.
So, grew up in Chicago, went to public high school, Glenbrook North Spartans. And we can get into that if you want. But essentially, went to Princeton for my undergrad, majored in engineering. So I was, very focused on school, as you might imagine.
Sure.
Growing up. Very traditional background. I didn't really see, there's obviously a lot of difference between India and the Midwest, but they're both very traditional places.
True.
As you might imagine. So, go to school, do a good job. I actually partially got into school because I was a really good golfer, because Princeton's Division I, and I played golf all the way through college. So, so pretty much all I did was do math and golf.
Nice.
Until I was about, 20 years old. That was pretty much my life.
Beautiful. Your dad, was your dad a businessman? Did he own manufacturing?
He did.
Yeah, okay.
He did. You've done your research.
Yes. You told me that.
I probably did. So my dad has a very interesting story.
Okay.
My dad grew up in India, not from a wealthy family, not from a poor family, just, general middle class. And after he graduated engineering school, he always wanted to have his own company, but back in those days in India, as in the 1960s, that was impossible. There's no way to get out of the country.
Sure.
Didn't have any money, just graduated college. So he got a very good engineering job after college. And back in those days, if you got a job in a country like India, you had done extremely well. And you probably were going to get married and just have a very nice life by standards in, 50 years ago. But that was not enough for my dad. He really wanted to have his own company and live in either Europe or the U.S. But with no resources, that was impossible. But one day, he's walking around the factory floor of the engineering company he's working at, and he sees this big machine that's not doing anything. And so why would any one of us care about that machine, right? It's a broken machine. But because he was so focused on his outcome of leaving India, he had the idea that, hey, where's this machine from? He looks at it. It's from a place that he never heard called Denmark.
Okay.
He had no idea where Denmark was, right? There's no Google Maps back then.
Yeah.
So he writes the company in Denmark a letter and basically says, hey, India's a poor country. Your machine here is broken. You should really teach me how to use it. And sent off the letter, not expecting a reply.
Sure.
It's a random letter from some guy in India.
Yeah.
But they actually wrote him back, and they said, hey, we will actually train you how to use this machine. And we'll even pay you something while you're here in Denmark, wherever this place Denmark is. But we're not going to pay for your plane ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that sounds like a yes to a lot of us who have resources, but if you have no money, and I don't even think there's exchange between India and Denmark. How do you get kroner in India in 1967, right? I don't know how you do that. So that was pretty much a no. But since my dad was so focused on leaving India to start his own business, he basically did something that I think the rest of us would think are crazy, but maybe not the people on this podcast. Not any of you guys out there would think is crazy, but I think the rest of the world would think this is crazy, which is he sold his motorcycle, which is all he had. He borrowed a ton of money from a family friend, and then he liquidated his dad's entire life savings just to buy a one-way ticket to Denmark.
Wow.
Now, what he didn't tell his family and friends is that he didn't really have a job there. He had a 90-day work permit, which basically meant after 90 days he was deported back to India.
Yes.
With no job, no life savings, and no motorcycle.
Wow.
But he said, you know what, I'll just figure it out when I get to Denmark, wherever this place Denmark is.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm here, so the story ends pretty well. But he had to go there, had a jacket 5 sizes too big, because who has a winter coat in India, right? I think maybe some family friend gave him a jacket, right? And he shows up there, doesn't know the language. If you've ever heard Danish spoken, it's it's not a Romance language.
No.
It's pretty hard to learn. But he gets there, learns the language, works hard, and is able to stay there for over a year before applying and getting a job in Germany, going there, doing the same thing, learning the language, staying there for a year, going to Canada. Obviously, we know English, so that's easy, a lot easier transition. And then finally, it took him about 10 years from working all around the world, saving enough money to start his own company finally in Wisconsin 10 years later. So it's just a great reminder for anyone watching who's been through your own hardships, our own hardships. We all have our own issues, but just remember how lucky we are to live in a country like America or a Western European country where you don't have to travel all around the world, risk everything, leave all your family and friends just to realize your entrepreneurial dream. We're very fortunate here. So, we think we have obstacles, but it's all a matter of perspective.
So, beautiful story about your dad, man, and which tells me that you got to have a beautiful relationship with your dad.
Yeah, my dad is a very upstanding guy.
Yeah, and your story is very similar to my dad. And my dad was very successful in Iran, and he was in charge of the country's, if you want, TV manufacturing distribution. Big manufacturer from Germany that had manufacturing plants in there, Zenit. And so he was in charge of, he was the vice president of human resources and basically managed about 2,000 people, right?
Wow.
And so he had a status and money, and because of war and what was happening, and because he was really concerned with me at that age, around 8, I was getting pulled in, I was getting brainwashed, I was almost getting involved in all this, and my dad had some concerns, and after certain incidents that happened regarding like my childhood and so on in terms of the country. So my dad decided to say, fuck it, we're going to get out of here. Because if I would have stayed, I would have either fucking died in the front line, in the war, or I would become some kind of psychopath, religious asshole, right? That was the path that I was being pulled into at that time because it was extremely...
Right.
It was extremely brainwashing at that time. Only just to give you a fucking scenario, it's like, hey, man, here's a key to heaven. They would put a plastic key around your neck and would ask you to go and become a fucking martyr. Whether you would be 9, 10, it didn't matter. As long as you physically look big, you could be in the front line carrying a gun. So to make a short story long, my dad made some sacrifices. We went to Pakistan with driving in the car. We escaped from Pakistan all the way to Singapore. From Singapore, we came to Canada. He sold everything that we had so we can buy some passports and fake identities just to get the fuck out of there and be able to just come to Canada and declare as refugees where my uncle was. And my uncle and my grandmother, all my uncles, my dad actually paid for all their tickets, all their education for them to be in Canada legally. And we had to flee the country primarily because of me and what was happening to me. So he made that big decision. So in 7 days, right, from the time that he made the decision to the time that we were in Singapore, like our life has completely changed. The status was gone. He was a nobody in Singapore. We were living in a hotel waiting for a passport, and we got fucked by the first guy, so we had to spend 3 months. And so no status, almost no money, in a foreign country with 2 kids, myself and my brother and my wife, and just waiting, but really focused on the outcome, just like your dad. The outcome was I gotta get my kids out of this country, and I gotta provide a better life for them somewhere else. So 3 months later, he finds himself delivering pizza in Canada. That was his first job, right? Come in. A week after, he had, my dad is the kind of guy that just works, right? Doesn't sit home and wait for somebody to give him something. So delivering pizza. So in 3 months, I can sit here and say, shit, man. Like the guy had a status. He was somebody in a place. To give all that up and go through all the hell that we went and to come and deliver fucking pizzas, it's like shit. He knew exactly what he wanted as an outcome. And so my dad gave me the opportunity to myself and my brother to truly have a better life, to go to school, to study, to learn multiple languages, but above all, to be free. Because we were exchanging our freedom as kids to something that we didn't even understand back in the days. So when hearing your dad's story reminded me of my dad's story and my relationship with my dad that I see very similar to yours. My dad is my hero. Like that's how I would call him. I mean, he's the one that saved our family, and he's the one that had the courage to make that move. He's the one that had the courage to write that letter. And he had the one that had the courage to sell the motorcycle and take all these risks, going basically for an unknown, right? 90-day visa, whatever that means, in Denmark, whatever that is, right, at that time. So let's go back, and I tie that in because, often guys that come into Warrior Week have some kind of difficulties in their childhood with their dads or some kind of issue. I would say I was fortunate enough that my dad is my hero and always will be my hero and remains the hero of my life and a guideline for me to take decisions. And I kind of feel the same with you and your dad, knowing you in the past and what you shared here. Am I right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
So beautiful. Talk to me about you graduating school and then Talk to me about that first aha moment. Remember on our phone call when you came in and talk to me about that first big fucking win for Naveen when he came to business and your accomplishment.
I appreciate it. Amazing story, by the way. I did not know that. I've known you for a while. I did not know that story about you.
Yeah.
How do I turn down the volume a little bit on that?
I'll do it.
Appreciate it. And it actually reminds me of tying back to Warrior, accountability. Because your dad and my dad were extremely accountable. They went outside the bounds of any normal sort of societal behavior, whatever societies they lived in at the time, to make something happen.
So true.
And we're both, immigrants here.
Yes.
I was born here, obviously, but still, you're not a typical white American. and forget about if you're immigrant or non-immigrant, but anyone in the U.S. should be able to take at least some level of accountability for their situation.
Yes.
Because there's so many resources here, even if you have nothing. And obviously in Iran during the war, forget about anything. There's no social service. I mean, it's a war zone.
There's nothing, yeah.
There's nothing.
Zone. Yes.
So your safety is at risk, much less, your financial flexibility. So amazing story. aha moment. So let's go. Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about after college,
Sure.
which ties very well to that.
Sure.
I mean, so I feel like when I was growing up and I was just cranking like a mofo at school nonstop since I was 5 years old. So I was basically just cranking from 5 to 18 to try to get into an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
At the time, Princeton, and maybe now, I don't know what it's ranked now, but it's the #1 school. So that's
Yeah.
where I wanted to go. And they had a golf course on campus, so that's where I wanted to go. It was a very obvious choice. Obviously, getting in was next to impossible. Somehow I got in. But I was just super burned out after that because it wasn't really something I'd chosen for myself. I mean, I did. I was excited about it. But it was sort of like the construct of like, oh, this is what you do, right? Which I'm not upset about that in any way. It worked out very well.
Yes.
But I didn't really think it through what it all meant. What does it all mean to go to college? What does it all mean to get a job and make a lot of money and be respected and successful and all those things that we think are
Sure.
the highest order of achievement. And you're tying that back to our first conversation around Warrior, which was that basically I had sacrificed a lot, and I'm not comparing real sacrifice, military sacrifice, or things like that, but for what I sacrificed my time, or I committed my time, I should say, to really fucking hard work for a very long time, until I was about, I guess my whole life, but really hardcore from age 5 to age about 32 or so. I had a break when I was 32 or 33. We can talk about that later. But I don't really think that there was much a break in between because after college, I went to Wall Street. And I was an engineer in college, which was it wasn't that easy to be an engineer. And then went to Wall Street. And Wall Street is like the ultimate grind of all time, the ultimate competition, the ultimate stage. Now, I was junior and young back then, but you're still part of that. There's plenty of movies made around about that. So you're working literally 24/7. Your entire life is work. And I think the mentality is that it's not about the hours. It's knowing that it's kind of like Warrior Week. There's no way out. Like you can quit and be nothing, or you can just grind it out. But when you make that shift where your work is your life, then it's a different mental shift. It's not about the hours. It's about like, this is my world. And everything that matters is within this career construct. And that was pretty much my way of thinking, plus or minus. I mean, I obviously, I didn't mellow out my work ethic, but I mellowed out my mentality about what, things are all about for, again, age 5 to age 32 or 33. And what you made me realize, which I was, that's actually, I will say, I think the reason I came to Warrior Week was because that first conversation we had, because I could not believe that you were able to speak to my experience so quickly on a phone, knowing me for only 30 or 40 minutes, which meant two things. One, you were lucky, which is highly, highly unlikely, but more likely that you had talked to so many men in similar circumstances that you're able to immediately assess and read someone in such a unique and, with such insight and talent. I was extremely, impressed is not the right word. You really have a truly unique and special ability.
I appreciate that.
And I mean that. And it was that, it was just that I never recognized my achievement at some deep level. I had recognized it by the, financial resources or big house or, obviously having a couple nice degrees. I went to Harvard Business School after 4 years of working in between my career or in the middle of my career. But I never really just thought about, really felt inside like that was a huge accomplishment. I mean, in my mind, I was very proud, of course, but I wasn't like, man, I really did something. I really did something special there.
Yes.
I never gave myself the acknowledgement, which sounds like, the ultimate first world problem. But at the same time, if you don't give yourself that acknowledgement, it doesn't matter how much money you have or anything. It's whatever level you're at. If you don't give yourself the acknowledgement of having achieved whatever that thing is, then you're not going to keep going forward. And that's the one thing you taught me, which is that I'm like, no wonder I don't have the drive anymore that I had when I was, in my early 20s, because it can't last forever. The fuel of fear can take you a long way, but it can only take you so far,
And I remember, what you're describing is just owning the feeling of acknowledgement. Because understanding acknowledgement in your mind, the logic of your achievements, yes, there's a check mark on that in your mind. And it positions you in whatever the achievement brings you, right? So if you get this status, if you finish at this school, those are the facts. What we don't take enough time is feel the achievement. This is what Naveen fucking did. Let me tell you a story about Naveen. Naveen's dad was so and so, and he came to this country, and Naveen worked hard from the ages of 5 all the way to 32 and 33. And at this age, here's the first milestone of achievement. How does that fucking feel? Well, I got to tell you, that feels awesome. That feels great. That feels inspiring. That feels like I can actually lead in this area with pride and certainty and confidence. So I remember our first conversation, of course, after the back and forth, and hey, man, I'm Tim Ferriss's friend. I'm like, I don't give a fuck who you are. Just come on the call, and I want to talk to Naveen. That's all I want to talk to. And after we went through a back and forth, and inside of our conversation, I specifically remember you were talking about how you built your first, I think it was your first company, and how you actually achieved your first million. Remember that conversation?
I do, yeah.
Where I'm like, okay, hold on. And we took a pause, and we had a conversation around that. And I asked you to go and look for your W-2.
Yeah, my W-2 on my bank account. So I need to go still do that. I did look, though. I didn't find it.
I know. But it was... It shifted your mindset to go on a quest of something that truly, like, finding the W-2 wasn't really the goal. The purpose was to shift your perspective and feel what you achieved then, which is a huge fucking achievement by itself. So talk to me about that achievement, and you have an opportunity to share with so many young men that are listening, that are like you, grinders and workers and working hard, and share with them your first success.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, I've been fortunate that I've had my good family and education and resources to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that not everyone with the same resources would make the same choices, but I've had those resources to be successful, and I always sort of downplayed it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to make people feel bad. You know, I mean, like, I don't want to make people feel bad. Sometimes you're a little cocky when you're, have a couple beers,
Sure.
but like in general, you want to kind of oh yeah, what do you do? I'm an investor. I don't really say much.
Yeah.
I don't say much about what I do in normal conversation. But then that gets into your subconscious, and then you sort of like make everything like a little quieter.
Yes.
And you never experience that. So what you took me back to, you made me realize that, obviously, it's not about the money.
Sure.
It's easy to say maybe when you have money, but it really is not about the amount of money. It's about what it represents, which is that, I think I made my first million when I was maybe late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I was a partner in a place called Vulcan, which is Paul Allen's private equity firm, which I went there to help start after I graduated business school. It was literally didn't exist before a bunch of us got there. And so, one of my investments went extremely well, and it grew from there. But, we sold a little bit of it, and that to me was well over $1 million. But what I was happy for a while, of course, at the time. You couldn't not be.
Of course.
But looking back, I realized that I didn't really feel it as much as you could have felt it if I was more sort of in touch with that side of my personality. And I realized I'm like, it's not about oh, look, check this box. It's that represented an unbelievable amount of commitment and work over a lifetime. And in some ways, it also represented what my parents had done for me over that very long period of time. And of course, our family and other people around, and this great society we lived in, and all those things had to come together to make that happen. That's a very hard thing to do.
Yes.
And took there were actually a lot of cooks in the kitchen that helped that happen.
Yes.
And I never really went back to think about how momentous that was. Even though, I'm not saying it's Olympic medal or whatever, but for me, that's what I was striving for.
Yes.
And so to actually achieve that goal, which as a kid in high school is impossible, even though you're like, I want to like be an investor or whatever I thought that meant back then.
Yes.
I want to be a corporate titan. But
So
to actually do it,
you think about late 20s, you achieve this, and then you continue to grind. Obviously, the reward of the money was great, and you felt successful, and you continue to grind, and you build the fucking empire that it is today. You built 1,000 times what it was, and so it's a massive empire that's built today, almost a decade or close to that after, right? Imagine this. Imagine if you would have stopped just then and own and feel the power of the achievement just like you feel it now. I wonder what kind of fucking empire you would build with that power. Because without stopping, you build a massive empire. But I wonder if that perspective would kick in then for you to feel your achievement and take the power from that and go, which is how you feel today and which is how your drive is aiming at building even bigger and bigger, more impactful businesses. So that's some thoughts there. It's just think about that. But really coming back to the conversation of you being on the phone and wanting to come to Warrior Week. So life is good, but then you go to Tony Robbins' event, and inside of Tony Robbins' event, you meet Garrett, and
who did not even give me the time of day at the time. What an asshole.
He's like, hey, listen, call Sam or something like that.
And he's blowing off our dinner tonight. Who knows what he's doing?
Just for the record, let it be known. What's the date today? April 10th.
April 10th.
Time is 8 p.m. Garrett J. White has just blown the dinner with Naveen.
And by the way, it's significant that he's blowing it off. Let me tell you why. Do you know, I think this is actually the 1-year anniversary of when I arrived in Dana Point for Warrior Week 36.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, Jeremy and I were doing a run before.
Yeah, we're going to double check.
And I think that's right. I think it started on Tuesday, but we all arrived on Monday night.
Yes.
If I knew what was in store, if you told me what I was going to go through on Warrior Week 36 before I got there, I probably still would have come because I couldn't. I'm not going to say no, but I would not have been as excited because that day, honestly, that day was one of the hardest days
I remember that
I've been through. And I want to tie it back to what we were talking about before with the celebration, which is that on that day, I think I felt more pride for what we went through together on that first day than I had in years.
Yeah.
Years.
It's a unique experience. It's quite a unique experience that exposes your totality, and it exposes a side of you that is really likable, a side of you that is real, a side of you that is human, a side of you that is a warrior, like the hidden warrior, the Indian warrior we call it. And that side came out, and it came out later on during the week. I won't say at what particular evolution, but it was beautiful to see that. Because if it was almost like this other guy that broke the mold and just came out and like, okay, this is the Naveen that we want to hang out with. Like everybody felt it, everybody knew it. But you got curious at Tony Robbins' event. You talked to Garrett. Garrett said talk to Sam. You watched some videos. Let's just go back to what truly really resonated with your heart for you to say, this is something that I want to have a conversation with.
It was, I think, one of Garrett's first videos where he's walking in Vegas talking about the concept of sedation.
Yes.
And the concept of, wanting something more.
Yes.
Now, I'm fortunate that, I'm always doing personal development in some way. So I've never, done something where I'm like, oh, I'm going to hit rock bottom to do something. But inside, you feel like I did not have anywhere near the energy, not even close to the shit I would do when I was in my early 20s and early 30s or
So-
mid 30s, whatever age.
So was it a lack of purpose?
It was exactly a lack of purpose.
Okay.
Because I was thinking about this before I walked in here
Yeah.
with our friend Jeremy, the ballad maker.
Yes.
And at some point you need to have enough stuff to survive and take care of your family.
Yes.
Once you have that, it's what you want and desire, and maybe you have good reasons for it, maybe not the best reasons, whatever they are, doesn't matter, but you stuff you desire. But after you sort of have a lot of the stuff you want and desire, the toys or all that shit, then you can't. I was smart enough to not keep like buying like more expensive versions of the same crap, right?
Yeah.
Like, but at the same time, the next level is contribution,
Yes.
right? And so like it really is about intent.
Mhm.
If you're building a company because you want to make another $10 million or whatever the number is, that's one thing, and that's not really that exciting.
Mhm.
That's not why I was running my startup with a friend of mine.
Yes.
It wasn't because we wanted to try to make a lot of money. That would be a byproduct. It was more about the impact that we might have on the world if it was actually successful. Maybe it might be a small impact or a big impact, but it really was about
The impact.
the impact, because you can't work that hard with those little odds as an entrepreneur if you're focused on money, because there's easier ways and less risky ways to put money in the bank. But if you wanted to do something that has real impact and real contribution, you have to start with the why.
It's true. You know, they say that, what is the most expensive currency in the world?
You got me there.
It's impact.
Impact.
When you have impact others. And so the most expensive currency in the world is when you have impact on others. And there's no doubt why you were seeking that and why you were chasing that, to feel more power, to feel the power of contribution, and the growth that comes from putting your energy into that. So you come into Warrior Week.
I come into Worry Week, and I'm doing well, but I'm not feeling that energy or purpose.
Yes.
And I knew from our conversation, just the way you identified that so effortlessly, that I'm like, this is the place I need to be. I don't know what the fuck these guys are doing. I don't know why they're wearing all black. I hope this is not some sort of cult. But like, Garrett's obviously a great guy, so I'm like, all right, I'm going to trust the process, and I can do a lot of push-ups. I can do, I could probably do more chin-ups than anyone here. George is kind of an animal, but like, I'm like, I'll be fine with that stuff. I didn't realize I was going to be frozen. I didn't realize having 9% body fat's going to like totally kick my ass. Because I don't know if you remember, but at the end of the first day, I could not speak.
I do.
Literally couldn't speak.
You lost your speaking capabilities.
I lost my speaking capabilities completely. And
so the first night we come in, and I believe this was one of the coldest one that we've actually had. Were you around the fires? Did we have the fire pits?
Actually, we were the one after.
Okay,
but it wasn't that much warmer.
Okay. So you heard about that one. But let's talk about the first night, right? And the specific place that we call the pit. I want to take you back in there, and as you went, as your your body, your physicality was broken down, and you were exactly in a place where you find yourself in the space that we call the pit. What did you feel? Like, what did you feel inside of the pit? What was your pit, Naveen?
The first thing I felt when you had me in the hole,
Mm-hmm.
that someone dug for us, or actually we dug for ourselves, I should say, I was very confused because I knew I was in the right place, but I didn't really know why I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had a feelings why I was there, but I couldn't like articulate it very well.
Yes.
But I knew I was not going to get out of that hole unless I convinced you that I knew why I was there.
Yes.
And so I think that was actually one of the hardest parts. If you think about it, like, all right, I feel good, everything's great, but I just don't feel like I have that fire, and I do not know why.
It's difficult.
Because I was doing for the last year or two before we were, I guess, 2017. So I sold my last company in 2013.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it had been actually but that was unbelievably intense. So it had been almost 4 years. It's a long time. And I was not doing any day-to-day 9-to-5 job. I was managing my investments. I was on boards of directors, doing stuff like that. Definitely took a year or two off to do absolutely nothing.
Got it. Okay.
Except like health stuff,
Sure.
like getting back in shape. But 4 years is a long time where I had a purpose, but I realized I've been operating my life and doing all this stuff on like 10% capacity, 20%, 2%, who knows? So low, it doesn't even matter. But that's what I realized after the first day. I didn't realize when I was in the pit because that was the beginning of the first day.
Sure.
And that was a huge realization. And it was just that. It was just that I did not have that passion or fire. And I didn't know what I was going to have to do to get it back because there was no other, goal to have based upon my previous system, which is saying you need to make X amount of money, you need to have X amount of respect, X amount of degrees. All that stuff was gone. That had been completed.
So what did Warrior Week open your eyes to for Naveen?
It opened my eyes to that internal pride that comes from pushing yourself to the next level. And I realized that over those last couple of years, I didn't want to go through that pit again.
Yes.
Because to get to whatever the next level is for any person, and for me, I knew I was going to have to work really fucking hard.
Yes.
And I know once I commit to something, I am not going to give up till it's done.
Yes.
But that means that it could take a long time, and it could take a lot of risk and a lot of work and pain.
Yes.
And I really didn't want to do that again. I'd done that so many times. It pretty much always worked out. I had no idea. Subconsciously, I did not want to do that again. I was not inspired to do that. And that is inspiration and purpose is something that is very, very hard to foster in someone. And Warrior Week did that. And that is saying a lot.
Yeah. And because you've been in the industry, and there are so many books written that are intended good. There's good intentions behind the book, but it will not move a person. They will talk about the concepts of intentions, and they will talk about the concepts of purpose. And on paper, it makes sense. While you're reading, there is this moment of gratification that you're satisfied with what you're reading. Your brain says yes. Your heart says yes. Your body even says yes. And he said, I'm going to do some of this shit. And you do it for 2 days or maybe 20 days. And then suddenly it disappears just like smoke in the air. Warrior Week wasn't something that disappeared like smoke in the air. Warrior Week wasn't another seminar. Warrior Week was not another book. Warrior Week was not another, if you want, event. It was a journey.
Not in any way. It's a journey through a set of experiences
that you create for you.
That I create, we created, and created together with the other brothers in 36.
It's you cannot undo it. It was co-created, and it's in the universe. There's no reverse engineering and say, okay, go back to what it was.
You can't go back.
You can't.
In a good way.
You cannot go back in a good way. And so when you came into Warrior Week, there was a set of identity that was associated to Naveen, the character that you play in life.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those identity or some of the sets of the identities shifted priorities. Some of them got awakened. Some dudes that Naveen knew inside of you, an identity part of you that you knew, that was dormant for a while. So talk about specifically you grinding inside of workplace, you grinding for your career, you're grinding there and focusing on your body. Two other areas kind of took the back end, right? One was both of them are relationship. One is relationship with a significant other, building families and growing. So that has been on the back burner, as well as the relationship that you had with God. Talk about the realization that you had on that during Warrior Week process and after, and how's life for you today?
Well, one thing that I realized, which is, in retrospect, is the most obvious thing in the world, but I never really thought that it applied to me, or maybe I just never even thought about it at all, because my goals did not include any sort of being or balance stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It all was about, my career, and your body was there to support what you're doing. It wasn't like a goal in of itself. Of course, there's goals with, different athletic goals and whatnot. But that was 5 hours a week, and your career was 80 hours a week.
Yes.
And then balance and being were literally a zero for who knows how long. And I always thought that was a little, not a waste of time, but it was not contributing to the career.
Mm-hmm.
So spend that extra hour on whatever, or spend the hour screwing around so you can relax your mind before you go back to your email. But now, with having at least a focus on the realization that balance is a thing.
Yes.
Which sounds like a small thing, but awareness is, massive, right? Just having that awareness. And being now, thanks to Coach Jesse, I meditate every single day, sometimes twice a day. If I have plane trips, I meditate twice a day. You know why? Because if you think about it, you're on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking about, it's so normal, but think how insane that is. You're in this thing that weighs like who knows how many tons with 200 people, and you expect it to go from point A to point B across the country or the world in like a few hours. It's just insane what people created, 100. It's unbelievable. It's still like, you look at it, you're like, unless you're an engineer, you can't really understand why exactly it goes up and down. But think about how much energy it takes to move that thing. So when you're meditating on the plane, you're sort of like, and it's true, I guess, anywhere you are, but you're in the presence of like, there's so many people around you, kind of like going to a rock concert. When you go to a rock concert or like a game, you feel that energy.
Yes.
Like you don't feel the same when you're at home watching the game. You just don't.
No,
because people, we're social creatures. We need that human energy. Whether we want to admit it or not, it's true. You need that energy. And the same thing's true on planes. You have time to meditate, and you have so much energy moving your ass across the country.
Yes.
So sometimes I'll do it twice a day. Before Warrior Week, I could not meditate for 3 minutes because I would think about shit. I just would give up.
Yeah.
And the biggest distinction that Garrett and Jesse and you gave me, which is an amazing one, so simple but just genius, which is that you don't need to achieve anything with the meditation. You're meditating to meditate. You're not trying to there's no bad meditation. Fall asleep. That took all the pressure off of it. And then you just start doing it without a goal. And it's been a huge game changer.
It is the one place where Naveen doesn't have a fucking goal. It is the one meeting you walk into when you don't have a target, objective, or all right, we're walking to this fucking meeting. Kind of like today when you came down here. You kept knocking at the door, Sam, what are we going to talk about?
I did.
And
what's the purpose? Hey, what's the outcome of this?
We're just going to find out. And that's what it is. It's because for most of your life, you have been trained like a lethal assassin to hit targets and goals. Trained like a motherfucker. You said it yourself. From 5 to 33. 5 to 33. That's fucking 27 years of training and practice of being a lethal assassin to hit targets and hit them. The targets that you've been shown most of your life has been targets of business and in the context of achievement.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the path that you've taken. And it was the path that was shown to you, guided to you, and you took off, and many stood back. And you were in the front line, and you got the graduations from the multiple universities and the business and the first million and everything else that blew after that. So throughout most of your life, you've been conditioned and trained to focus that. And now you're meditating, meaning now you walk into a meeting that has no fucking purpose. You're just meditating for meditating. All right, well, I guess we're out for 20 minutes. What comes out of it? I'll trust the process.
Trust the process. Which in and of itself would not have made sense.
Nope.
A year ago.
But it's creating balance in your life right now.
It is really creating like something I didn't do before a year. 6 months ago. Started in June specifically. Is creating such a glue through the other areas. And it's really helps you deal with any situation so much better. It's very funny because I spent a lot of time in New York City.
Yes.
And if you go to a doctor there, just any doctor, you know, like you got a cold or whatever, they always ask you what medications you're taking. And I say none. And they're like, well, sleeping medications count because apparently everyone takes sleeping medications there.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, I don't take any sleep medications. I never have. But the meditation makes you sleep so much better. You're so much clearer. You think faster. I meditate before I do my MMA training. And because you can think faster, because that shit's so hard. Like you think faster, and I kind of suck, so I need to do everything I can to get better.
Yes.
Right? So it's unreal.
But that's part of martial art. If you study martial art, specifically karate, and they have these meditation solo kind of they call it.
There's a name for it, right?
Yeah,
it starts with a K, I think.
Yeah, it starts with a K. Exactly. We used to do it when we were kids in our karate classes. Kata.
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 Right.
It's a meditation.
Right.
Kata it's a meditation. You visualize the fighter. You're fighting against someone, but in your mind, and so meditation is a part of that. But interesting enough, the space that is opening up for you, right? Because it's counterbalancing. In one area, you're going hard. In the other area, you now have goalless meetings, nothing to hit,
with myself.
No achievement with yourself. But I want you to look at the balance that this is creating in your life right now. And let's focus on the word balance. For the first time ever, I feel that you are balanced enough to be inside of a balance, meaning to have a relationship.
Right.
I think, like, I'm just realizing this right here. For a year, we've been knocking at the door with Naveen. Hey, man, like, family, fatherhood. You're like, yeah, but, like, it's fucking not happening. I'm like, all right, man. So I'm gonna arrange for some girls in India, arrange marriage, whatever the fuck.
Whatever it takes.
I think I sent you a hot picture of this Indian actress. By the way, she was pretty awesome. I sent it to you. Started the seduction. You're like, what the fuck, man?
I'm like, dude, what are you doing here?
But the idea is that I'm just realizing now is that 27 years program as an assassin. Now you have these spots where you stop. And you go to the void with no reason, no purpose. You come back, but it's creating balance. It's really creating balance. It's creating balance in your character, the way you communicate, the way like it is a total different Naveen. Not the Naveen that before was a bad one, but this one is a more dominating, powerful Naveen. You're a badass. You're doing MMA right now. Business is blowing. The purpose behind your business is more clear than anywhere else. Like you're meditating. You're connected to your being. The missing piece of the puzzle, it's the balance, but it is in the most attractive state ever. Like you're not coming in from a place of force. You're coming from a place of power, and now there's attraction that's going to take place. You feel this?
I feel you. And I think that going back to what you said before,
yes.
is that it's acceptance versus achievement. I think that's the distinction. Because before I was achieving a lot,
yes.
but inherent in achievement is that you're not good enough as you are.
True. That's
the subtext. But there's another place you can achieve from, which is a place of acceptance, which is pretty damn hard to do, I have to say. Like, you know, I think it's very hard to do, but that's where I think I am right now.
Yes.
And sometimes I would, like, blow off some of the, you know, yoga and stretching previously, even though you need to do that shit when you're 42.
Yes.
To keep in shape. Because, you know why? It would expose my limitations. And I did not want to see what my limits were, so I just wouldn't engage in that exposure. And that, obviously, mentally, you know that's stupid, but you still do it anyway because we're emotional beings, and I don't want to, you know, do that.
Yes.
So I think it's that the feeling I felt when I came back from day one of Warrior Week is that acceptance.
Yes. And
even though I knew that, and also the realization that, like, holy shit, I've been performing at 10% of my power. I'm not using the word capacity because capacity is sort of like kind of feels intellectual.
Sure.
The power is at the capacity and the emotional capacity, because you got to be fired up to hit the big goals. And you need to be working hard.
Yeah, you're gonna need fire, bro.
You need fire.
And part of what's missing in Naveen in those 4 years where this fire was just fucking fire. That's what it was. Like, it wasn't the desire, it wasn't the knowledge, it wasn't like, it was just there was a need for fire, and you saw a glance of that fire in Garrett. Like, you just saw it, right? And it's like the heat of that fire warmed you up and attracted you, and you come into this crazy conversation, and you feel more and more of the heat. You're like, okay, this fucking thing is getting hotter and hotter, but that's what I want. I want fire. Subconsciously, you want fire.
Right.
So you're driven from the heat. The heat gets heavier, heavier. You come to Warrior Week. It actually fucking burns you to some extent, but you're
Big
like,
time.
I have found it. I have found it. And you took the fire with you when you left, and you put it in practice. And in the fire, you also forged something very special that was actually forged in the fire. And it was you and the man of the 36. You forged this connection. You forged this relationship that most men don't have. Most men don't have this kind of relationship. It's a relationship that is an invitation for collision that built among men, calling each other out and making sure that, hey, man, we don't tolerate your lowest standard here. We always promote your highest standard, and that's where we're going to hold you to your highest standard. And that special connection was forged in the fire of Warrior Week. You use that fire to forge that, so you always have that with you, with your brothers. So talk about a little bit of what that has brought in terms of value, and continues to bring value in your life today.
I mean, it's huge. It's huge because that fire is everything. But you can't do it alone. I always was a Lone Ranger. I thought I could do things by myself because I had a certain level of whatever. But within Warrior Week 36, especially during one evolution, which you may remember, which was the MMA evolution, which was fucking frightening because you got a guy like Travis who's like, you know, ex football player, big guy, super nice guy, but big guy.
D1, Division 1,
yeah.
son.
And then you got you know, Derek, who's like ex-Marine, served overseas, and you know, obviously boxes all the time, animal. And then you got me, fucking awesome golfer, but it's not gonna help you with the MMA ring. But I remember that I had to go to a different place. I had to go to a different place.
And that's where we saw a new character. Like, the switch was turned on, and we've lost the Naveen that we knew, and we watched and witnessed a Naveen that we always saw in you. All of the brothers would say the same fucking thing. They saw it in you because it would come out from time to time, but it won't give himself permission to stay out permanently. And says, this is who I am. I'm going to fuck some shit up. And by the way, I accept myself. I accept this version of myself.
Right.
Because there is no reinterpretation if we don't accept ourselves. Meaning that when acceptance takes place, that's the only space that we have to reinterpret something if we need to. Imagine there's an emotional charge that's taken place in your life, or there was a limiting belief put on you in your life. You did something, you were not good at it. Somebody says, hey, you should not do that. You're not good at it. And that kind of became your program, right? And you started doing something else. Not because you weren't good at it, but somebody said you're not good at it, so you kind of accepted that. And now you focus your mind on doing some other stuff. Years go by, you still think that you are not good enough in that area. All that was an emotional charge that took place. You never accepted the emotional charge. You've always accepted the label that came with that, which is this fucking story. But if you would accept the emotional charge that, hey, man, this happened, and at that time, maybe I wasn't good. But that doesn't define that I'm not good enough to do that. And so the reinterpretation, and most of the time positive, begins from a place of acceptance. And that's exactly what happened with you. You found a version of yourself that you give yourself permission to, number one, let out. Number two, look and see and watch what it did for you. And number 3, accept it and invite him in. And that's why you keep doing it. It's a year now. You keep doing MMA, and it's part of your life right now because you have access to that version of you so that you feel more powerful. You extract power from that version of yourself.
And I do. That's exactly right. But it's that acceptance that allows you to push the envelope to do something that you know you're going to suck at. But in that moment in the MMA ring, you couldn't leave, right? There's no leaving that ring. So, like, I was either going to be, you're going to be, I mean, most of us, not everyone in there is a fighter. So it's like everyone's going to be exposed for whatever they are, weaknesses and lack of skill and whatever else, fear.
Yes.
And so I just made a decision that I'm going to accept where I am and just try as fucking hard as I could.
Yes.
To, within reason, fuck some shit up with my brothers.
And there is a context attached to that content that you just dropped. And the context is 30 days of preparation before you even step into that MMA ring. And this is not a physical preparation. It's an emotional roller coaster for you to understand the purpose of why you've been put in there and what is about to happen and extract the lesson from it. Because Warrior Week has never been about a physical event.
Right.
I mean, if you think that you're going to have the same effect just by going to some MMA gym or trying some boxing, that would not last.
Right.
There is a build-up to it for you to accept and recognize the emotional charge that has taken place at one point in your life and that has robbed you from the power of extracting power from that guy in the ring.
You have to have a meaning to it.
Yes.
And to have a meaning, you got to be open to that meaning. You can't be closed off.
And from a place of truth. Because most of us put all these shitty meanings around things on the surface level. And Warrior Week really digs down inside and takes out the real truth and says, fuck you to all the layers that we keep putting in front. I want to talk about, like, your entire experience, man, right?
Yeah.
And your entire experience, not only at Warrior Week, but your life and where you are today. And
well, dude, first of all, some of the shit I'm doing now, I never thought I would do.
Let's talk about
that. I've done a few things before Warrior Week, so that, first of all, the meditation, maybe we talked about that enough, but that is like I can tell you some stories. It's crazy the amount of, let's just call them coincidences that happen somehow magically increase when you're meditating all the time. I don't know what that means. That's a universe. Believe whatever you want, but there's so many examples of.
Give you a little secret on this show. You ready?
Yeah.
Coincidence was a man-made word to rob away power from miracles.
Interesting.
So every time you hear coincidence is because they wanted to dismiss a miracle right away. So remember that what you experience is not coincidence, is stay in the power of it. We adopted the word coincidence, including myself, to dismiss a miracle right away. That served somebody else's purpose.
Language is power.
Carry on.
So that, and then I hate the cold, even though I live in these cold weather climates, but that's a controlled environment. An uncontrolled environment is a cold fucking ocean.
Yes.
That's a lot colder.
Or an ice bucket.
Or getting dumped ice buckets on your head. Well, I don't know who would do that to anyone, but that might happen. And now before I came to the show, Jeremy can tell you, we did a run, and I was taking a cold shower at his place, and we're all getting all fired up. I would never do that a year ago. And it's been a year, and I'm still taking the cold showers. I'm still meditating. I'm still doing MMA. I'm still, focusing on the balance. I'm outperforming all my business goals. So it ain't a fucking seminar.
You know why you're not cold anymore? Because you got a fire inside of you that keeps you warm in all area.
That's what I say. You can't be cold when you're on fire.
You got it.
You can't be cold when you're on fire.
On fucking fire. You cannot be cold when you're fire. That's a magical code right there. If you're watching the show or listening to this podcast, just to think about the concept of you cannot get cold. You cannot get dark if there is light within you. When you dim your light, when you dim your voice, when you bring it down so others don't feel like, oh, this guy's ego, this is where you're going to start feeling cold.
Yeah. And even in the beginning of this podcast, I was feeling a little cold because, I want to give you whatever you need, but you don't want to say everything.
Yes.
You don't want to say, oh yeah, I have sold 5 companies.
Yes.
Worth over $3 billion, by the ripe old age of whatever, 40.
Yes.
And I'm going to probably sell at least that much more over the next 10 years.
Yes.
Maybe earlier.
For the record, that number was 3 billion. Some people take billions very lightly, so you can just Google that shit and figure out how many zeros. But also, like, you can actually, I think Tony Robbins said that, 1 second is 1 second, obviously, but 1 minute is 60. What is it? Do you know what he said? It said 1 minute is 60 seconds, and then I don't know, man.
1 hour is 3,600.
And then when he went to million, he just wanted to visualize the million. The million was, I don't know, some sort of crazy number, but it was so crazy enough that it was tangible. You could understand the difference between 1 minute and perhaps, I think something like 48 days would equal 1 million second. I'm not sure.
No, you're right. He said like, oh yeah, if you go back a billion, it's like the dinosaurs, but like a million is like Jesus Christ was alive.
Yeah,
like, something like crazy like that.
Crazy. So it gives you an understanding of what billion is, and coming back to your achievements inside of that. But really, as we bring the show to conclusion, what I want you to put out there, man, is a message for a guy that is watching this podcast or listening to this podcast that finds himself exactly in the same place that you are, which is a very successful entrepreneur, very powerful man, because money brings power, and basically you can do whatever the fuck you want to with the money, right? You don't, like, you can buy anything you want, you can hire anybody you want, you can have people do whatever you, like, the money is in your hand, and therefore the power is there for you to do that. But there's one fucking thing that it doesn't do for you, and that is to build the fire inside of you. That is something that you have to forge as a man. And you find a place that did that. We think that this is the only place in the world that does this for men, but there may be other places that we're not aware of. But you find a place to forge the fire and find the fire, and you have kept the fire inside of you, and it served you so far, so greatly the way you described it. What would be your message to a guy that is cold not in his business, but is cold in his marriage, that is cold in his kids, that is cold in his sense of being, his connection with God?
He doesn't even know he's cold
with his body, that he doesn't even know that he's cold.
Because he only thinks that he's only focused. Where focus goes, energy flows. I think another TR great one. He's only focused on his business. And my guess is most people think that, or at least I did, the other areas of your life are there to support that business, and that's bullshit, right? Because the reason you don't have your fire is because you don't have an equal, or at least some sort of balanced focus on not just your business, but your body, your being, and your balance. And when you get momentum in all those 4 areas at the same time, you regain your fire. You can't not.
Yes.
You cannot regain your fire. And then the other thing you have to remember is that your business is a reflection of yourself. It starts at the top, and it's like, the most obvious euphemism, but people forget it. They just have to look in the mirror to know they've forgotten it. If they're out of shape, or if their relationship sucks, or they're not, meditating, they're not connected with anything. So you have to get that fire first for yourself if you're going to set your business on fire to really take it to the next level. And the thing is, when you get yourself right, you can make such quantum improvements. Because ultimately, you're not going to get anywhere linearly. I mean, sure, if you're, if someone else is managing your money and they want to get 4% a year forever, that's one thing. But in terms of what your purpose in life is, you want to make quantum leaps. Because here's the thing people forget about careers, and we get, you want to talk about that a little. We can talk about that if we have more time.
We do.
But great careers are not linear. They don't just go like, if you watch, just look at, whether you like him or not, he's obviously a very successful man, President Obama. He was no one a few years before he was president. Relatively no one, right? But it's these quantum leaps you make, that you prepare for the next step. And the reason is because say you get 1% better. It's not like your paycheck gets 1% better the next day, right? There's not some like magical formula out there that says, hey, you deserve this, so we're going to, give you this now because you're 20% better.
Yeah.
You prepare yourself till you're overqualified for the next step, and then coincidences or, miracles happen. You get an opportunity and you're prepared. And then you make that big jump. That's how great careers happen.
Well said.
And the key is, one of the keys is to understand that, because I don't think a lot of people understand that. And two is that try not to miss a step. Because anything you do takes 5 years.
Yes.
Right? Anything you do takes 5 years.
I fucking agree. Based on my own experience. Yes, go on.
And that ties nicely to Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000-hour rule. Now, we don't do 10,000 hours in 5 years. It's more like, 2 or 3, right? Or probably 3. But to get that mastery, it takes about 10,000 hours, which is 5 years. And hopefully you can shrink that to 3 with Warrior.
Yes.
But it takes 5 years to do anything.
Yes.
So you can't be sitting there and in year 3 being like, man, this is not working. If you're doing the right things,
yes,
and you believe you're seeing progress based upon your own metrics, then eventually you'll get that quantum leap. For example, right now, my main company is a company called Skykick. It's not a consumer company, so this is not an ad because we sell to businesses, thousands of businesses around the world. When the guys started it, I backed them within, I think, year 1. We had 6 employees.
Yes.
We have almost 200 now.
Wow.
Could be more because we hire a lot. Sometimes we hire 10 people a week. It's growing like insanely. Over, it's been a, quote, as we like to say, a 6-year overnight success story.
Yes.
Or where'd you guys come from? Oh, that sounds so obvious now. Well, no. These guys worked their balls off for 2 years before they started the company in their spare time. Right? In their spare time, they were thinking about, they weren't working on it because you couldn't work on it with another job, but like in their spare time, they're thinking about what they want to do. They're not sitting around, watching whatever the Kardashians are doing, right? Nothing wrong with the Kardashians, but that's not where they're spending their time.
Yes.
And then when they decide to take that big leap and leave their jobs and actually start the company and start building the technology, they had that confidence and they were at least mentally prepared. Maybe they hadn't coded anything yet, but they were mentally prepared for the next journey.
Beautiful. Quantum leaps, preparing for the next quantum leap, not a linear. Do not look at career as a linear path because most of us are taught that way. You do this, you receive this. You do this, it's one more step. But it's really quantum leaps, and it happens every 5 years. I've seen it from your stories. Every 5 years, some shit happened in your life. Every 5 years, my life has changed as well from a career perspective as well. Like some big thing has happened. And I can totally recall to what you said, closing my eyes right now and just going back 20 years back. I graduated as a software engineer and I worked in a software company initially, worked around the technology called RFID for tracking.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, dude, like I've worked on innovation and software, and that was the first 5 years. That first 5 years slipped into tracking goods and materials for oil companies, and that brought me to oil and gas. And another 5 years in oil and gas, and then after that, another decade in oil and gas. And each 5 years, I went more and more in depth inside of the oil and gas industry. And then ultimately, at the end of that, a quantum leap, which I left everything behind, and now here at Warrior. It's been the past fucking 4-5 years of my life, 4 times 5, 20 years, what you just described, that it's been quantum leaps. And I can close my eyes and I can see myself burning the fucking midnight oil during those 5 years, getting prepared for the miracle to take place, not knowing when it's going to come. But really, it's preparing not to receive immediate gratification via money or whatever that is, but really doing the work because you believe that you're building yourself, because you're really building this version of yourself that is to become. And so that's what we do here at Warrior 2. It's constantly working on a greater version of ourselves, this version of ourselves that we're hunting. We want to become the version that is in the future. We want to pull him from the future and bring him into the present.
Yes.
And that's what warrior is. And that's what we do.
That's the quantum leap is. It's you're trying to move yourself, the current you forward, and then you use some of the warrior techniques to sort of bring that reality forward, and meet in the middle somewhere and accelerate that process.
Yeah.
It's sort of like something, we can't talk about it forever on the podcast, but it's something that is real.
Yes.
And you see it in the warrior time warp.
Yes.
Because, this is the 1 year anniversary of me coming to Dana Point at the first time for warrior. But I remember being here like I've been here 100 times. I remember the walk that, the jog that Jeremy and I took, the walk around, beautiful up here, unbelievable. The offices, it's like I never left. Because the amount of presence we had, and that's something that I think a lot of people are missing in our world, especially with these. I'm guilty, by the way. The company I sold to Yahoo 5 years ago was a social media app.
Yes.
So I know how to use a goddamn phone, right?
Yes.
And I'm 100% guilty of being on my social media too much. So that's the one thing I have to work on. But I also understand that being present is something that is so powerful, because then all your faculties are here. If you only have half your energy here, you can only do like 5% of the work. If you double your presence, whatever that even means, you can do 20 times as much thought, ideas, creativity, all that stuff, especially in today's world, because one of the things people are feeling, and I know from at WarriorCon, a lot of folks at WarriorCon are feeling this in a big way, which is that, a lot of guys came, a lot of men came because they were not doing so well in their business. Even though what they probably really found was, because most guys are married with a couple of kids, is that their balance was fucked up, and that was impacting their business in a big way, going back to our idea of, if you don't have the fire, which is all 4 areas, body, being, balance, business, your business is going to be a reflection of your messed up self.
True.
Right? And if you're getting most pain from your balance, then that's your weakest link.
True.
But a lot of guys, like we said, are coming there for their business, and it's like, if you don't fix that one part,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You need the fire. It's an honor to have you in the studio, and I want to conclude by saying you brought in something really, really important and special to me, which is presence, which is rule number 3, be here now, as you remember. So rule number 3.
I remember, because Travis was shouting that in the lake of death.
So be here now, this idea of presence. I want you to think about something. If we are constantly present, then the concept of memories doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Memories is belonging in the past, forcing ourselves to go in the past and trying to remember a memory. But if you're actually present, like just you felt today, these are not fucking memories. It feels that it's today.
Right. You can experience them with the richness.
Yes. Yes, you can call upon them, and it's not memory. The concept of memory vanishes away. Presence becomes available when you tap into it. And so that's what you felt running on the jog, feeling the office the same space. It's just like you felt like as if it was
right, because
a year ago.
We were so present.
Yes.
At that time.
You captured it, and it stayed with you. Hey, man, want to thank you for being on the podcast.
Appreciate it.
Tremendous amount of value and guidance to the guys that are watching and, listening to this podcast. You can find out more about this podcast and pictures and videos and additional audios at warriorweeknow.com. And you can also subscribe to iTunes on the Warrior Week podcast. My guest, Naveen, is a very successful entrepreneur and a man that has completely transformed his life in the past year by simply believing in the concept of becoming this greater version of himself, because that's what it is. You continue to go after the version. Even Skykick right now, it's like you're after Skykick success so that you become this greater version of yourself that sees that.
Exactly. It's what the journey makes you become.
Yes.
It's not getting to a finish line.
No.
The finish line does not exist
at all.
It literally does not exist.
So thanks for being with us, man.
Thank you, Sam.
All right. Everybody have yourself a fantastic day.
It was go.